Your Excellencies, I don't think it's many ministers here at least, but if there are, you're welcome. Distinguished delegates, welcome to this panel session number 2. We are still suffering from the fact that there is a coffee break going on, but we hope that more people will join us here soon. We have a very tight time schedule, and we have 9 speakers that are going to deliver their presentation or their speeches here today. And we will do a very short and compact program so that we save as much time as possible for questions and discussions afterwards. My name is Oddigeir Danlielsen. I am the director of the Northern Dimension Partnership on Transport and Logistics. And for those of you who don't know what the Northern Dimension Partnership on Transport and Logistics is, it's a partnership between 11 different member countries with the Ministries of Transport and Ministries of Foreign Affairs. And we also have the European Commission as a full member of the partnership. Addressing a little bit what was raised as a concern in the last panel session, the cooperation with Russia, I underline that Russia is a full member of our partnership and a good and constructive partner that we are continue having useful dialogues with and cooperate with all the time. Ladies and gentlemen, we are speaking today about how we are connecting Asia with Europe and vice versa. We heard that Mr. Morozov from the Russian Railway in the last session was calling up on the international organizations to do whatever they can to facilitate this cooperation. And these sessions are exactly that. It is a focus on international organizations. Let us move directly into action. And I invite Mr. François Davenne. He is the Secretary General for the Intergovernmental Organization for International Carriage by Rail. Mr. Davenne, please.
So, Excellency, Minister, ladies and gentlemen, I've been told to try to make my presentation in 5 minutes, so I took my watch since OTIF is located in Switzerland, that we try to be exact and to not be more than 5 minutes in explaining what OTIF is doing and above all, what is our added value in developing Euro-Asian traffic. A few words about OTIF, a few words about history. At the end of the 19th century, there were the first globalization, and for the first globalization, there were 3 components. There was the telegraph, there was the post, and there was the railways. Post and railways succeeded brilliantly since there is now a worldwide regulation on telecommunication on one side and on post on the other hand. But for railways, as it has been pointed out by DB Schenker, for example, there is no global regulation. For example, there is, for the consignment letter, regulation by OTIF, CIM, and regulation by my colleagues from OSJD, SMGS, from the western part of Europe. So that's one of the challenges we are facing for Eurasian traffic, to have common and uniform regulation. So what we are trying to bring in OTIF is what I call legal interoperability. That means uniform contracts for operating trains, and also technical interoperability on 2 sectors, the dangerous goods regulation and the technical regulation. So I will be very fast in explaining what we are doing, so this slide should take a little bit more time. But basically, we are providing contracts for passenger, contracts for freight, uniform contracts for relationship between keeper and railways undertaking, and also a uniform regulation for dangerous goods. And this one is actually quite close to an Eurasian regulation, because everything is managed at the UN level, and we have a very large uniformization with the corresponding OSJD regulation, and obviously a technical regulation for interoperability. We have nowadays 49 member states, and in this map you can see when you are dark green, that means that you apply all our appendixes, since as all international organizations, states can opt out or opt in for some of our appendixes, but you can see that most of Western Europe, Maghreb, and also very important states in the development of transit traffic with Asia, like Turkey and Iran, are members of the organization. So what are we trying to provide? I will just, since I'm lacking a little bit of time, show you the drawing that we are trying to communicate on what could be legal interoperability. For our point of view, legal interoperability will be to have very few uniform rules for passenger and for freight. That will allow the sectors, that's the second level of the pyramid, to agree on detailed standard contract. That's the way it's working in Western Europe, and I think it's working quite well. And the key success of it is the simplicity. Simplicity is a word which is a little bit odd in the railway sector, but the uniform rules for CIM and CIV are quite simple and short. CIM, for example, is 20 pages. And on those 20 pages that define the main rules for building standard contract, the company, under the umbrella of the CIT, can define useful standard contracts. And then at the bottom of the pyramid, you can have, at the company level, specific development allowing to have specific products for the company. And I think you will understand the interest of that in the light of the presentation of DB Schenker, saying that what they need for Eurasian traffic is to have uniform contract rules that doesn't exist for the time being. As I will be short of time, but I will be delighted to respond to any question concerning the technique. I will skip the technical aspect of our regulation to say that what we are trying to bring within the OTIF is a few simple concepts. First, it's internationally binding law. That means that the upper part of the pyramid, it is binding law. That means that the legal regime that we are defining is binding for the member states. The second idea is to have a bridging concept. That means that we can bring regulations that will suit both for, let's say, Western Europe country or for countries that are within OSJD. For example, Iran is a perfect example of a state that is very important in the region and which is member both of OSJD and OTIF. That's also an approach based on partnership because that have been shown by the previous presentation from the business side, nothing is possible with it without large partnerships. And the last idea, and for me that's the most important, and I was quite happy to hear from DB Schenker and DB Sport the same kind of concept. We try to consider railways as a networks, and a network for working, it should be connected, it should have uniform rule, and it shall be interoperable. And that's the three words that we are trying to bring to reality in the railways world. So I think I almost fulfilled the 5 minutes challenge. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Davenne, for giving us this crystal clear picture. And I must also say it was asked for by the previous session that this is a key element that we need to find a solution to. We are moving on, ladies and gentlemen, saving time, and you saved us some time, and we hope the rest of you will do the same. I have the pleasure then, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce the Deputy Chairman of the Organization for Cooperation Between Railways, Mr. Jianmin. Mr. Jianmin, please, the floor is yours.
Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very honored to represent OSJD to make this representation. First of all, look at this map. This is OSJD. Now you know railway is an efficient, safe, and environmental transport mode. It is suitable for inland, long-haul, long-capacity transport. The growing trade volumes between Asia and Europe brings a great opportunity for railways. And OSJD is an international International Intergovernmental Railway Organization. It was established in 1956, and the total area of OSJD members is 37 million square kilometers. Population is 2 billion people. The total length of railway lines is 281,000 kilometers. The freight volume of OSJD member in 2014 reached 7 billion tons, and passenger traffic reached 4 billion passengers. OSJD located in Warsaw, Poland, and the work language is Russian and Chinese. We don't speak English. This is a member area of OSJD, from Pacific to Baltic Sea, you can see. This is our 26 members, and Latvia is also a member of OSJD. We have also observers and affiliated enterprises. OSJD engaged in the field of developing international railway transport, enhancing the competitiveness of railway, stressing the standard legal basis, maximizing the comprehensive benefits of railway transportation. At present, the cooperation within OSJD is implemented at 2 levels, intergovernmental and railways. Minister Conference is the highest governing body of OSJD. It considers and takes decisions at the governmental level, mainly on transport policy, development strategy, and transport law. The meeting held once a year, and this year it will be held in Mongolia. In the level of railways is a conference of General Director of OSJD Railways. It organizes cooperation in the field of international railway traffic, develops joint competitive proposals, adopts rules for the use of wagons and coaches and containers for international services, organizes the process of amounting between railways. It was just now held in Prague. It held also once a year. The main objectives of OSJD you can see. We have 4. The main transport laws of OSJD is SMPS for passenger traffic and SMGS for goods traffic. This is our transport corridors. We have 13 transport corridors from Asia to Europe. You can see it. From China to Europe. You can see Chongqing and Chengdu is one of the points of these corridors. In Europe, OSJD thinks The main challenges we must face is first the transit obstacles. Normally, at the border crossings, the trains have to undergo customs control and inspections, security checks, immigration clearance, and sanitary inspection. In addition, change of locomotive, change of crew, technical inspection of acceptance of wagons is required at the interchange stations. These operations stand alone can be a source of delay. And the second is the per service and high transport price. The high transit tariffs for railway and the non-transparent information are constraining your Asian rail transport. We have heard a lot about it. And third, the imbalance of goods traffic. Trade imbalance is a challenge for international transportation operators, with a large number of empty containers being transported, especially from Europe to Asia. To develop your Asia railway transport, OSJD focuses on the four main works. First, planning transport corridors. Just now, I have said, OSJD cooperated with European Union and UNESCAP to develop transport corridors. 13 OSJD transport corridors with total length up to 104,000 kilometers are playing an important and irreplaceable role in the Eurasian railway transport. Secondly, simplifying the transit procedures. OSJD member countries always take actions in order to simplify procedures of transit. And OSJD also cooperated with government departments such as border control, customs, and railways to simplify procedures of transit at national borders. Third, promoting common CM-SMGS consignment node. OSJD cooperated with OTIF CIT to improve the common CM-SMGS consignment node and electronic consignment node standards, extend the scope of application of this unified waybill, which is applied in container train from China to Europe and by railways of Russia, Poland, and Czech Republic, Ukraine, Moldova, and so on. It has promoted the Eurasian rail transport cooperation. Fourth, improving the transport regulation and laws. Regulation and laws are the basis of international transportation. To adapt to member countries' different railway management systems, OSJD revised SMGS. The revised version will become effective on July 1st this year. Besides, OSJD and OTIF also actively participated in the project called Towards Unified Railway Transport Law, which was initiated and organized by UNECE. Ladies and gentlemen, OSJD has an important position in the Eurasian transportation market. We would like to work together with our partners to eliminate the barriers between different modes and transportation, and the barriers between different countries, develop a new Eurasian connectivity, and make great contribution to the development of the Eurasian economics. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jianmin. We do all understand that the organization that you are representing is huge, and it's an important partner to work with when we are going to develop the future, embracing most of the countries that we are actually speaking about. Just as information to the audience, Mr. Jianmin might be leaving us a little bit earlier because he has a plane or maybe a train to catch. We are moving on to the next speaker, and in this supply chain, there are many key players and many actors that are important and need to be present to make this to flow in a good way, and of course customs is one of them, and maybe one of the most important. I have the pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, introducing to you the Director of Compliance and Facilitation from the World Customs Organization, Mr. Gaozhang. Please, Mr. Xu.
So good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure and honorable for me to be here to join this important conference today. So I would like to thank the organizer and Latvia government inviting the WCO for this very important meeting. So I would like to say that it happens that last year, the theme for the World Customs Organization is connectivity. So this is the focus of this conference. And this year's theme is coordinated border management. I think this is also the concern of most of the speakers. So the World Customs Organization, or the WCO, is the only intergovernmental international organization in customs matters. So it was established in 1952, representing 179 customs administrations around the world that are collectively processing more than 89% of global trade. So as the global center of customs expertise, the WCO is the voice of international customs community. So the WCO has highlighted connectivity as a key strategy for the international customs community. We state that borders divide, but customs connects. So connectivity connects a vision of arrangements worldwide that support the smooth and lawful flow of goods. So it galvanizes the establishment of the partnerships, the sharing of knowledge and information, and the delivery of capacity building. So connectivity thus paved the way for community protection, modernization, and economic development. So the WCO develops and maintains global instruments, standards, and tools to enhance connectivity. So as a first example, the WCO published its first transit handbook last year. So as a matter of fact, it was published 10 years ago, but last year updated. So it deals with the various aspects of operation of customs transit procedures and is accordingly intended to serve as a practical guide to assist the WCO members to develop a functional and effective transit system which may consequently contribute to the enhancement of connectivity between EU and Asia. So in a more general context, the harmonization and simplification of customs procedures at the regional and global level is necessary for connectivity. So the WCO's revised Kyoto Convention provides a comprehensive set of uniform principles for simple, effective, and predictive customs procedures with effective customs control. So the convention was adopted in 1999 and has currently 99 contracting parties. So streamlining customs procedures is also the objective of recently concluded trade facilitation agreement of the World Trade Organization, so aiming to improve countries' ability to connect to global value chains. So the WCO firmly believes that the RKC and other relevant WCO tools, such as the single window compendiums, will support its members to implement the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement. So the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement calls for the establishment of national trade facilitation committees in which all relevant stakeholders are represented. So since the Trade Facilitation Agreement concerns to a large extent customs, so the WCO advocates a leading role for customs administrations in these committees and offers technical assistance to establish them. So furthermore, I would like to highlight that coordinated border management, I just mentioned, is a main theme of the customs community today. So we are signaling the international customs community's aspiration to further enhance its collaboration, cooperation, and working relations with its many partners, not only government agencies, but also with the private sector. So in this regard, we have issued the CBM Compendium last year, and we are going to include a new pillar on cooperation between customs and other government agencies in the WCO Safe Framework of Standards to secure and facilitate global trade. The WCO also developed further guidance on customs business partnership. So capacity to implement standards and tools that I mentioned earlier is also very essential. The WCO delivers capacity building and training to requesting customs administrations to assist them in their individual development and modernization, including in implementing the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement and other trade facilitation measures. The WCO has a wealth of expertise and experience in global customs capacity building, including a network of accredited customs experts from member administrations at its disposal and comprehensive donor arrangement mechanisms. So based on this expertise and platform, the WCO has launched its Mercato program to provide tailor-made support for the implementation of trade facilitation measures, including the establishment of effective transit regimes and modernizing customs procedures in general. So undertaken in the spirit of collaboration and cooperation, this conference is very timely and will serve to highlight the importance of global standards to enhance the connectivity between EU and Asia. So thank you very much for your attention. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Su. I think you said it very clearly when you mentioned that borders divide and customs connect. Could it be better? And we also, of course, like very much when you are mentioning the single window approach, because that is essential in this as well. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been focusing a lot on rail, and most of the sessions earlier also has been rail, but there are also other transport modes in the world. And we need to give them a little bit attention as well. And today I have the pleasure of introducing to you the Secretary General of the International Road Transport Union, Mr. Umberto di Pretto. Please, Mr. di Pretto.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, for realizing that there are other modes, and not just rail. But of course, we have to work with all the modes, and as we heard from DB Schenker, we have to come up with the best system to move goods from origin to destination. Maybe just 2 words first about the IRU. We were very humble in our creation back in 1948 with just 8 members. Today, we've grown to be a much more global organization, and we even have in the audience our members since 1992 from Latvia Soto, the President, Secretary General. But because we're such a global organization now, everything we do, every project we do, we have this global perspective and saying what are the actual impediments at a global level, but also looking what are the different dynamics that shape transport in general. Over the last 15 years, we've been looking at how do we actually enhance transport between China and Europe. But we looked at it from 2 different perspectives. One, how can we actually have viable road transport from the Far East to Europe? Firstly, trying to discover, is it even viable to go by road? Looking at the infrastructure and the various impediments. But what really motivated us was not so much saying, how do we more effectively get goods from China to Europe? The motivating factors, if we look at the dual effect of globalization and containerization, we see that the countries in Central Asia basically have been deprived of the benefits of globalization because everything basically went by sea, and as such, they didn't really have access to the global markets. So we said, how, through road transport, and since this conference is about connecting and connectivity, how can we connect the, in particular, Central Asian economies to the major global markets? And we said this can be done by road transport, because we can actually reach even the most small business in the smallest community and then bring these goods or products that are made or grown to whatever world market. And of course, linking up with all the other modes, and ideally in a very effective way. But what concerned me, what I heard earlier this morning and throughout this conference, is by looking simply at saying, let's move goods from China to Europe, and we saw the CNN film where they said, this is great, the train is sealed, and then it just heads off, and it finally, when it gets to Germany, then it's reached its destination. We're just recreating the same situation where then the Central Asian countries are neglected, where they don't have access to the world economy. Now, I still believe these trains, I think every capacity is necessary, and as the world economy continues to grow, we'll need to find capacities absolutely everywhere. But that's why we were looking at what are different viable solutions. Through the various caravans and what we call the new Eurasian Land Transport Initiative that we launched, we actually saw that there's a lot of infrastructure that is unused along these routes. And in fact, this is what many of our drivers reported they saw. They said the roads were empty, of course, until they reached the borders. And we also seen that even when you invest more into road infrastructure, and so you can even go faster along the routes, if then you're stuck at a border, you really haven't achieved much. Indeed, we've seen that from our various caravans and the NELTI project, that up to 57% of transport time is lost at borders. This waiting time at border actually creates an environment that's conducive to corruption, and as such, then you see a figure of 38% of transport costs then are linked to illicit payments, mainly at border crossings. Well, there are solutions, of course, and there are ready-made solutions. The United Nations has a number of conventions, and as did the WCO to help border crossing. The one that you probably already seen the stand outside, the TIR stand, this is an instrument that was actually created back in 1949, 1 year after the creation of the IRU, where we put in place a transit system to allow trucks to go through borders with much greater facility, and giving to the customs a guarantee that the customs and excise duties will be paid. Later in 59 became a convention, and 75, more importantly, it became a multimodal convention. So TIR, despite those of you that might know something about it, you might say, yes, this is something for road. No, actually it's for the movement of containers. And I think in this conference we need to work together and see how can we apply TIR more effectively to multimodal movements. In fact, what I'm showing here is that it is a system where you have one simple system where the goods are inspected at origin, and they travel from origin all the way to final destination without breaking the seal. Therefore, it is a door-to-door delivery, and we have to put our minds together, how can we make this even more effective via sea and rail transport? There are some exciting developments this year. We'll be launching very shortly with Turkish and Iranian customs a completely paperless pilot. All the technical systems work, and I can tell you already the conclusion will be that it works. What we'll see as an impediment is law, that people need to change their laws to make certain that we can run everything purely in a purely paperless way. We'll also be running and demonstrating some multimodal pilots. There are already countries today that use TIR very much multimodally, such as the Turks, using it for ro-ro traffic into Mediterranean ports. There are also a number of countries that will be signing up to the TIR convention this year and implementing it. I think the biggest game changer will be China. We know that they've taken very quick steps now to sign the convention. This will be a game changer. All the ministries have adopted it. We're expecting in a matter of weeks, not months, that we have the final confirmation that China has signed and will implement the TIR convention. And this will also change logistics. It was said earlier that to change transport habits is a very time-consuming thing. It takes time. You have to work it out. But the moment you have a convention such as this that is signed, then people can rethink how do we actually run our various logistics chains. This will make road transport even more viable. Again, when you saw the earlier picture of road transport going from the Far East all the way to Europe, don't expect that overnight you're going to have millions and millions of trucks on the roads. 85% of road transport is under 150 kilometers. The amount of road transport that goes over 1,000 kilometers is only less than 1%. But it has to be possible to, just like electricity, to run a complete line to be able then to interconnect all of these economies and all of these businesses to the world. I think when you look at this, what we have to work on is, say, from China, how do we then do better the intermodal movements and realize the One Belt, One Road by implementing TIER in a multimodal fashion so that we get the best out of every mode, so we can find the best efficiencies from every mode. Ultimately, we believe that by China joining the TIER system, this will enhance trade movements between and in between the regions, as all the EU members are already TIER contracting parties. Some of the biggest users are in fact in the European Union. We also know that this will actually spur action within the South Asian regions. Pakistan, India, and others will then get on board with this, and this will then again change the dynamics of world trade, how we move and how we can move much more efficiently. The thing is, we just put it out to all of you that let's work together on this one. Let's not be unimodal, let's be systemic in our approaches. Let's make sure that the transport system works. A gentleman said earlier, we have to fill the box. Yes, we have to fill the box with economic demand, but then we have to move that box effectively from door to door. And I guarantee you, you cannot move something from door to door without including us. We're at the beginning, at the end of everything, and in between, at times, we'll take some of it as well, if the clients determine that that is the most efficient, based on what they're moving, the value, and the time that's at hand. With this, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Debret. I think there is nobody in the audience any longer who doubt that your organization is an important partner in the work to be done, and especially when it comes to the TIER canal. Very interesting also to note that China is joining, because then the connectivity is complete and the chain is there. I will not dwell on this, but we will move on to the next speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been speaking about rails, we have been to customs, and we have been to road and transport documents. And there is politics, and it's business people, and it's international organization, but it all in the end boils down to financing, because somebody needs to pay for and finance what we are going to do. And for covering that topic here today, I have the head of public transport division, including rail, from the European Investment Bank, Mr. Max Jensen, please.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the introduction. It says public transport, but you just have to correct it. It includes actually urban transport and railways, so it's also freight is included. Besides this, we of course also finance roads and ports and other transport modes. Anyway, thank you very much for the invitation for this event. Thank you for inviting EIB. It's a pleasure to be here. I think many of the interventions we have heard during the morning have been extremely interesting. It's been very interesting to hear the private sector's take also on the transport routes between Europe and Asia. These interventions clearly illustrate the importance of an efficient supply chain in the context of long-distance trade flows, as well as the need for a coordinated approach for the development of transport systems. I'm just in parallel going to run a few slides also on the European Investment Bank, because I'm sure quite a few of the audience are not familiar with what we are doing and who we are. I would like to make 3 points in the context of the long-distance trade flows. Firstly, that effective cross-border transportation systems are essential to boost trade and economic growth. We've already seen the problems at the borders. Secondly, this is why we need a strategic planning framework that goes beyond national borders, and why an agreement on these priority corridors is important. And finally, that in a climate of constraint on public finances and slow economic growth, we need to prioritize sound investments to plan and focus on the most important and viable projects. For the first point, transport and logistics have a number of direct and indirect links with economic and social development. One of the most analyzed has been its capacity to boost trade performance, which, under appropriate circumstances, can lead to higher income and employment creation. The magnitude of this effect will depend on the performance of the transport and logistics value chain, which will be affected, among others, by the following factors. Infrastructure. Trade and transport infrastructure remains a serious constraint in many countries. This is the case both for interurban links and for transport systems in our growing cities, where congestion is causing delays and increased cost. We heard about the last mile as well this morning. Customs and border procedures. Although improvements are evident in most regions, especially in border procedures, there's still a lot to be done in order to improve supply chain performance, as we just heard before. And on regulations, it's important to ensure that further sector upgrading is not inhibited by an unduly restrictive regulatory environment, as well as by unnecessary administrative formalities. Many countries have scope to significantly reduce delays and improve supply chain performance by rationalizing red tape burdens. I believe that only a good performance of these three factors will result in an efficient supply chain. But allow me to focus on the first one, infrastructure, since the EIB is one of the major financing institutions of transport infrastructure projects. During the last 10 years, the EIB has invested approximately 150 billion euro in transport projects. I'm happy to say that we gradually are increasing our lending to the rail, road safety, and urban transport projects in line with EU priorities to support sustainable transport modes. The main focus for EIB's transport lending is a support to the development of the trans-European networks and sustainable transport modes within the European Union. However, doesn't go on. Doesn't move on, but maybe someone can sort that out in parallel. Anyway, we also have mandates to support projects in most regions outside the EU. The list that I was supposed to put on here actually shows some of these investments. Okay. Anyway, so we have investments in land corridors in a number of countries. Now I try to remember these by heart. We have, in fact, in Ukraine, a number of projects. We have a number of projects also in Turkey. We had heard the mentioning of Turkey this morning, the Bosphorus Tunnel, Istanbul-Ankara link we are financing. We are doing this both in the rail sector and we are financing the road sector in some of these countries. In Asia, we have focused in previous mandate mostly on climate action and sustainable transport modes, but have recently also included regional integration in our Asia lending mandate, so we can also finance these cyber projects in Asia. For the second point, as I mentioned before, setting up a strategic planning framework goes beyond national borders. Within the European Union, the TEN-T policy has successfully been established by the European Commission to close the gaps between member states' transport networks, to remove bottlenecks and overcome technical barriers. But transport corridors, as we have seen, do not stop at European borders, and this is why we need close cooperation with our neighbouring countries and regions. There's no doubt that there's a continuous need for large investments for transport systems to overcome bottlenecks. Unfortunately, it's also clear that investment needs are likely to exceed supply of public national financing, so further development of alternative sources of finance and involvement of the private sector will be needed to fill the gap. Many public-private partnership projects have been successful, but others have failed, and we have learned a lot from these schemes, lessons that we use when we develop new financial instruments for the sector and lessons that we are happy to share going forward. Blending with technical assistance funds allows our promoters to access more attractive loans. The grant element is often used to enhance institutional setup and increase the effectiveness of project delivery. Several initiatives have been taken to improve the coordination of the EU community and EIB interventions and help countries to overcome their absorption capacity. The so-called JASPERS initiative in Europe is successfully providing advice to member states, especially in the new member states, and another advisory instrument, EPIC, has been set up to develop the capacity of the public sector to implement PPP projects and programs. More recently, we have developed another initiative for the southern neighbouring countries, together with the European Commission, and are now setting up an EIB infrastructure task force for Ukraine. These initiatives will allow dedicated people from EIB to provide advice to promoters to upstream project selection, preparation, but also very important to downstream implementation. Let me conclude by saying that the implementation of these corridors will be a challenging task. It will require effort and cooperation between all players involved. The EIB, as a natural partner for the development of these networks, is willing to step up its lending to projects on relevant corridors in a planned and coordinated manner, in close cooperation with the European Commission, other IFIs, bilateral agencies, and of course with our clients and partners. We'll be happy to continue supporting sound projects, not only in terms of providing attractive long-term financing, but also providing technical and financial advice. Thank you very much, and sorry for not being able to run the whole presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jensen. It goes with the name, the European Investment Bank, but now we know that you are active in many other countries outside Europe as well. It's useful to bring on. We are doing a modal shift again. and we are going back to railroads. Today, we are so lucky that we have the Executive Director for Community of European Railway and Infrastructure Companies present. Mr. Lieber Lochmann, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for giving also me the opportunity to present, let's say, a few views of the Community of European Railways Infrastructure Companies on what needs to be done. And now I would say from the perspective of the EU railways, or the railways that do operate on the EU territory, because the CR as such represents the interest of the members who are coming from the territory of the EU and the accession countries vis-à-vis the European institution in the context of the regulatory framework, in the context of how to set the conditions for the rail businesses on the territory of the EU, right? So I'm really pleased that to follow up on what has been said here, previous speakers about the administrative barriers, about the infrastructure and the technical conditions, because indeed what we need to do, and I mean really what we need to do from the EU perspective, is how to set the conditions right that we will be able to accommodate the growing demand for the cargo transportation from Asia to Europe, which is of course as it is and which is perspectively growing. And we have few questions that we need to ask here from the, I would say, as I said, the perspective of the EU. Do we have the infrastructure prepared? Do we have enough money? Yes, we've heard that we may have some money, if even not landed from the EIB, but it's of course not enough. Do we have the rail freight corridors really working? So do we have the capacity and the quality of the corridors? And do we have the rail freight competitive? Because we can only work in the intermodal context when the rail freight will be really competitive on the side of the European networks. So in the first place, we can be quite happy and lucky that the European institutions do recognize the importance of the Europe's railways and the Europe's rail freight. So we are happy to see that we have the TEN-T network, the transportation network, which are really, in fact, the backbones of the rail freight transportation, and the majority of them do rely on the rail as such. So this is perfect. We have also Connect Europe facility as the financial instrument that says, yes, do spend the available funding from the EU money, but also from the national resources on the railways. And that's why we are really happy seeing that 80% of the projects on the TEN-T network should be the rail projects, because we need to reboost, in fact, the capacity and the quality of the railway. So far, so good, and we are quite happy that we will see the railway development, and we will also see the development of the intermodal links, so the terminals and also the cross-border links, because otherwise we will not be able to act. We have slight doubts recently connected with the new program, or you can call it EFSI or the Juncker plan. I would say taking part of the available funding from the EU money and giving that as a loan guarantee to the hands of the EFSI, which is the program to attract the private investors. Of course, the quality of the grant on one side, the quality of the loan on the other side is quite different. So we are slightly worried that the new ideas that can be associated with the private funding will not go in the interest, but rather in the detriment of the railways. But this is something what still needs to be discussed. And this is something what we really hope will be, I would say, finally fine-tuned in a way that will help the railways as such. Because as I said, that at the first place, we need to boost the corridors. We need to boost the corridors in a way that the demand that is going to come from the Asian partners will really be able to be accommodated on the side of the railway network in Europe. And there, it's not only about investment, but also about how to invest in the right way. Because given the history of the development of the European railways, and unlike the territories of the 1520 networks in the Commonwealth of Independent States plus the Baltic countries, we have so huge differences in the technical parameters in Europe that do disable, in fact, the operation or the harmonized operation of the trains across the borders in between the European Union. So we need to harmonize the rules, we need to harmonize the conditions, so we need to invest not only a lot of money into the upgrades of the lines, but we also need to invest a lot of efforts in the harmonization of the operating rules in order to enable the trains to operate smoothly within the European Union as such, which is let's say, the aspect widely forgotten. So We need also to work on the entry gates, and I'm happy that we have been able to discuss the issue of the customs, because that's the additional thing that does create a barrier, the administrative burden on the border between the EU and the other countries, especially now with the newly implemented Union Custom Code of the Commission, which sets an additional barrier instead of removing the barriers for the transition period regarding the custom guarantees to be covered, to be paid by the rail operators. So we have slightly doubts over whether everything and all what needs to be going in the direction of lowering the barriers, it's lowering the bars, is really going in the right direction. And that's the plea that I would have to the Commission, which is unfortunately not present, at least I can't see it here. So how to really work in a way that will be for a better perspective and not worsening the condition of the rail operation, which is to be seen as the backbone of the services between Asia and Europe for the future of the freight transportation. So all in all, what are the policy recommendations that we have? Please do secure the EU funding for the EU networks. Of course, it needs to be complemented by the member states' contribution. It needs to be complemented by the loans from the EIB and other institutions. But that's the first thing that needs to be done. The level of the investments into the rail networks in Europe, and especially in southern eastern part of Europe. So if you remember the last picture, the last slide, the entry gates to the European Union is so low that the quality of the rail freight network is not able to and capable to accommodate the expected demand of the transportation from Asia. So we need to reinvest. We need really to invest much more money into the networks of the South and Eastern European part in order to accommodate the growing demand. That's one. Two is we should not only think about the investments, but also about the, I would say, sustainable maintenance and operational cost coverage. And this is what needs to be guaranteed by the multi-annual contracts between the state and the infrastructure managers. Otherwise, we will always have a difficulty of how to operate the railway in an efficient way. Third, what I said already, we need to implement the harmonized regulatory framework across all EU railways. We don't have it. We don't have it, and it's really going against, the competitiveness of the railways as such. Fourth, the alignment of the infrastructure user charging. Of course, it's nothing against the road, nothing against the intermodality, but it's how to boost the interest of the customers and attract them to use the railway as such. And the fifth, the internalization of the external costs. So it's not the society that is exposed to cover the cost of the transportation as such, but it's the sector itself, the transportation, that really covers the full costs. If all those recommendations are truly applied, then we will see the future of the railways in Europe really covering, accommodating the demand of the rail freight or the freight growth as such for the Asia-Europe transportation. So all in all, three conditions to be fulfilled: the good infrastructure, the harmonized infrastructure conditions, the good quality of the intermodal competition and coordination, including the terminals, which I have mentioned already, and of course, not last but not least, also good competitive conditions for the competition of the operators on the rail freight network in Europe as such. So with that, I thank you for your attention. Of course, happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lohmann. I think you reminded us about an important issue when you were asking the question if Europe is ready when it comes to infrastructure, and that is something to keep in mind when we are continuing struggling towards reaching our common goals. Ladies and gentlemen, China is by many seen as Asia. They are not alone in Asia, but they are a huge player in Asia, and they are an important player in this also. Today, we have the pleasure of having the Deputy Director General of the Department of European Affairs from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in China, present, Mr. Wang Chongqing. Mr. Chongqing is also the representative of the Secretariat for Cooperation between China and Central and Eastern European countries. So, Mr. Chongqing, your floor is yours.
better express my opinions, please let me use Chinese and English for interpretation. Dear representatives, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of China and the Secretariat for Cooperation between China and Central and Eastern European countries, I'd like to extend congratulations to the opening of the meeting. I wish to thank the host country, Latvia, for the excellent preparation. Today, I would like to share my thoughts on the connectivity cooperation within the China-CEEC cooperation framework. The China-CEEC cooperation is also referred to as 16+1 cooperation. It is a cooperation platform jointly built by China and 16 CEE countries. The cooperation has maintained a good momentum ever since its start 3 years ago. Connectivity cooperation has always been a priority in China-CEEC cooperation. Fruitful results have been achieved in the past 3 years. We have completed big projects such as the Belgrade Bridge over the Danube Montenegro Highway project. We have decided to develop a land-sea express passage between China and Europe on the basis of the Budapest-Belgrade Railway and the Port of Piraeus of Greece. China, Hungary, and Serbia are working actively to promote the Budapest-Belgrade Railway construction under the timetable. And China has signed customs clearance facilitation cooperation agreements with relevant countries along the passage. Important progresses have been made on direct flights between China and CE countries. Tomorrow, Air China will start a new Beijing-Minsk-Budapest flight. Other new flights are also expected to open within 2015. We are working to develop a new arteryway for China-Europe logistics on the basis of the transport platform of China-Europe regular trains. Chengdu, China has reached an agreement with Lodz, Poland, on the establishment of cargo transportation center. We also plan to establish a China-CEEC Association on Transport and Infrastructure Cooperation and the China-CEEC Association on Logistics Cooperation at an appropriate time. And I'm sure that the video we watched yesterday about the railway between Chengdu and the port of Germany has left a great impression on you. And under the joint efforts of all parties, China-CEEC connectivity cooperation shows a sound situation. And while promoting local development, it will also make positive contributions to the connectivity cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen, currently the global economic recovery remains sluggish. It is a general consensus among all parties that under this situation, strengthening connectivity cooperation will help boost the investment, promote trade, and encourage economic recovery and growth. China-CEEC connectivity cooperation is facing important opportunities. First, the cooperation between China and the CEE countries is highly complementary. Central and Eastern European countries are committed to adjusting economic structure, and they have a huge demand for investment and infrastructure constructions. And China, on its part, has abundant capital and advanced technology offered at a good and reasonable price. And combining the advantages on both sides will unleash great potential of cooperation. Second, China and the European Union have many converging points on policies. Currently, China's Belt and Road Initiative has entered a stage of implementation. European Union unveiled 9 transport corridor plans as well as the European Union Investment Plan. And the cooperation between China and the European Union connectivity cooperation will undoubtedly contribute new space to China-Europe cooperation and Asia-Europe cooperation. Just now I heard speeches from representatives that we are facing challenges in economy, politics, and regional securities. But we are confident that we can overcome these challenges and promote the cooperation of Asia-Europe connectivity cooperation. And to this end, I would like to make the following suggestions. First, each country should determine their cooperation priorities based on each other's unique features and needs, align their development strategies, and seek common development on the basis of equality and mutual benefit. And meanwhile, one should encourage active participation of companies and financial institutes. And second, governments and enterprises should perform their respective functions. Governments should facilitate business partnerships by building effective platforms, addressing difficulties, and accommodating legitimate concerns. And enterprises should develop new cooperation models, draw on each other's strengths. And third, remain open and inclusive. We should welcome participations of countries, regions, and organizations outside the region. Together, we can make contributions to China-Europe connectivity cooperation and Asia-Europe connectivity cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shanking, especially for encouraging us to overcome changes and promote cooperation. That is words that we like to hear these days, and also for your initiatives and suggestions. We are running out of time again, and I have the honor to introduce to you the Director General of the Association for the European Rail Industry, Mr. Philippe Citroën. Please.
Well, good morning, everyone, and would like to thank the organizers of this ASEM meeting for inviting UNIFE and also the Latvian government. And I was very happy to hear yesterday the declaration made by the President of Latvia saying that rail will be backbone of multimodal solutions to connect Europe and Asia. So now let's go quickly to explain what is UNIFE. We represent the European rail supply industry. We have rail manufacturers as members, rail control companies and infrastructure companies. What we say in the slide is that UNIFE members account for nearly half of the world market for rail products and a market share of 84% in Europe. I think that all the participants in this forum have some companies from UNIFE working in their countries if they have a rail system. Now, I would like to say that in the last study published by Roland Berger for UNIFE last year, that we presented during Eurotrans, we highlighted that growth in the rail supply market in the period going from 2017 to 2019 will grow at a rate of 2.7%. There will be a significant share of this growth in the Western Eastern Europe, CIS, and Asia-Pacific regions. And the challenge is how to reinforce and develop rail connection between Europe and Asia. So today we can say that Europe is in favor of an ambitious rail network connecting Europe to Asia and integrated in a multimodal perspective, hoping that there will be, of course, a level playing field between the different rail stakeholders of Europe and Asia. So we consider that there are three high conditions to achieve this goal. And I think a lot of those conditions have already been presented in the previous presentations. This is on one side interoperability and technical compatibility. There is investment for the completion of the sustainable network and innovation for more efficiency and capacity. Now for interoperability and standards, I think it's been mentioned on many occasions. Of course, our organization is active in developing standards and regulation as well as promoting an interoperable and European network that connects with others. And at EU level, because it has been mentioned as well, UNIFE thanks the Latvian presidency for its major support in finalizing the technical pillar of the fourth railway package. I cannot enter into detail, but it will be very important for the competitiveness of the rail industry to have this technical pillar of the fourth railway package adopted during the Latvian presidency. For investment, I just want to say that I was happy to listen to the presentation from the EIB representative, and I fully support what Libor Lockman from Sierra has said. We call on public authority and financial institutions to favor investment in rail projects such as ERTMS, the European Rail Transport Management System, which is developed worldwide, and we hope also that there will be the financial support for the completion of the rail corridors which are connecting the EU with its neighbour and more distant trade partners. And we know that recently the Commission has extended those corridors with the Balkan countries, and I was also very interested by the presentation made on the 16+1 agreement signed in December. Now, the last point, which is very important, and I don't think there's been a lot of presentation on this issue, is that we consider that improving rail technologies is absolutely essential. And the European rail supply industry and all the other players has been strongly engaged to innovate in favor of a rail freight system always more efficient and sustainable. And last year there's been a very important project which has been finalized in Brussels, it's called the Marathon Project, whose aim is to developing technologies allowing for longer, faster and heavier trains with minimal impact on existing infrastructure. And there's been a demonstration of a train of 1.5 kilometer long freight train consisting of 3 intermodal trains integrating new technologies, radio communication system and braking system. Now, before I finish my presentation, I want to mention, and I know that the Commission has been pushing for this this project together with the Member States and a lot of players of the rail stake players, like the rail industry, the infrastructure managers, the operators, the universities, academias and research centers. In fact, last year in Brussels, there's been approval of what is called the Shift to Rail initiative, which will go for the year 2014 to 2020. It's a public-private joint undertaking, shared of 50% by the industry and by the EU institution. It's a big project of 920 million euros, which aims to increase attractiveness and competitiveness of rail transport. I just want to say something on this program number 5 called Technology for Sustainable and Attractive European Freight. There are very important deliverables that will facilitate certainly the EU-Asian business for access and operation on interoperability, safety improvements, real-time data. For novel terminal hubs, marshalling yards, we want to minimize and better manage the operations via dynamic path allocation, intelligent wagons, new freight proportion concepts, longer trains, dual power locomotive, and I listened this morning in one of the presentations, but the problems that we have on climatic conditions, we want also to work on this issue of greater resilience to all climatic conditions. Trains will be longer, more robust, resilient, and intelligent for reduced cost and time. Now, the last thing I want to say is that we reaffirm the role that rail can play in the development of the Euro-Asian multimodal train connectivity, and we remain, of course, at your disposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sikwan. I'm in particular happy that you addressed the topic innovation. That is something that we definitely need in transport and logistics. And we should pay close attention to that also in the future. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, then we have come finally to the last speaker, yet another Asian country represented. I'm very happy to introduce to you the director of the Korea Transport Institute, Mr. Park Ying-young. Please, Mr. Young.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Good morning, distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen. I'm an honor for having a chance of share with you for Korea's transport effort to build a seamless Eurasian transport and logistics network, particularly for Eurasia Initiative and International Symposium by Korean government. Actually, Eurasian Initiative is proposed by President of the Republic of Korea in 2013. So that is under the theme of one continent, a creative continent, and a peaceful continent. So Korean government Eurasian Initiative contains one continent, creative continent, and peaceful continent. And one continent covers integration of transport and energy and trade. And creative continent covers technology and humanities of Eurasia continent. And peaceful continent, we are fully understanding the importance of security and peace in whole around Eurasian region. So Eurasian Initiative project an integrated system of transport, energy, and trade network across the region. So it can be the follow-up measure of Silk Road Express from Korean government, and also can cover the new maritime route through the Arctic Ocean. So with the realization of Eurasian Initiative in October 2014, in the last ASEM summit in Milan, Korean government and President proposed the Symposium on International Cooperation for establishing an effective Eurasian Intermodal Transport and Logistics Network conference. So why Korea? Maybe it's a little bit small country in far East Asia, but proposing this ambitious initiative. Geographically, as you know, Korea is the starting point and ending point of the Eurasian network, but also it can be another starting point to the rest of the world. And definitely, Korea is a country in East Asia with active trade with the whole world. And let me see what Korea did yet. Yes, actually, this clip was given by my colleague who is preparing the World Road Congress of this year. And because, as you can see from this video material, Korea is a country from the age of the Cold War, but definitely we are fully understanding the importance of peace and international cooperation in this world, and Korea is ready to share our rapid and effective development experiences with Eurasian countries, and would like to make a contribution to inclusive growth of Eurasia. So, as you have discussed yesterday and today, there are many themes and topics were discussed. So we, at the symposium, at next symposium, we would like to share our experiences and your experience in Eurasia and Asia, and then we could like to step up to establish the international platform to build seamless Eurasia network under the ASEM. So the symposium will be held in Seoul in September from 9th to 11th in 2015. So Korean government, Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport will be hosting this symposium, and my institute, Korea Transport Institute, will be an implementing agency. And this is the symposium secretariat. And maybe there is one more Korean colleagues will present about it, and there is one more chance to discuss about our Eurasian network. So there will be World Road Congress in Seoul in November. So it could be another chance for sharing the knowledge and programs. So thank you and welcome to my Korean symposium. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yang. Time is money. Время деньги. We are running out of time. There is a program following this also, so I think we will make this question and answer session extremely short. I intend to finish on time. But I have one question which hasn't actually been raised during the days here in Riga and Davenne. Referring to the last speaker, he is the only one I have seen that has been mentioning the Arctic Sea route, the so-called Northern Sea route, bridging Europe and Asia over the Arctic. I had the pleasure last summer listening to the Chinese Vice Minister of Transport on a conference in Helsinki, speaking about this Northern Sea route and how important it was for China. We know that China has a maritime Silk Road strategy and they have a Silk Road strategy. And the Vice Minister underlined, referring to also what the question from Mr. Lockman, is Europe ready? He underlined the importance of building connections between the northern ports and Central Europe to facilitate this traffic. I don't know if there is any of you that want to comment on that, but I believe that this is also an important part of the connections between Europe and Asia. I might let the answer to that hang in the air, and we will come back to that on another occasion. On site, on time, I learned once when I was an engineer, and it is on site, on time. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for attending. Thank you very much to all the speakers, and thank you for coming here. Thank you. Bye-bye.